My current work right now, and something that will be expanding this topic, is the IDR Academy, the Intercultural Development Research Academy, which is associated with the Intercultural Development Research Institute. The Institute has been around for a few years. We maintain an informational website, have cooperated a few times with Roberto and others to do conferencing. And we decided it was time to have a curriculum, basically a theoretical curriculum in constructivist approaches to intercultural communication. And you will find that curriculum on the website, and I think perhaps there is even some kind of a little brochure, something that we have brought here. This is one of those activities, like my previous activity with the Intercultural Communication Institute, which has two purposes. One of them is, in fact, for people to come and avail themselves of that curriculum. But the other is the mere existence of the curriculum. You know, being able to say, here is a curriculum, and it is about this aspect of the field of intercultural communication. I think that these activities are definitional. And this is what the topic, I hope, today is, which is, how are we defining ourselves? Are we defining ourselves adequately? Could we do it better? To what extent should we and can we be defining ourselves in contrast to something else? I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a necessary thing. You know, if one is not something, then one is nothing. And to be something, one has to also not be something. You know, a boundary delineates what something is from what something is not. And lacking a boundary, we also lack an identity. So there is nothing incorrect, in my opinion, about establishing an identity boundary for ourselves. And in fact, we fail to do so at our own peril. A large part of what I'd like to see today is our beginning to think a little bit about how we can establish that boundary, how it has been established, and how we can establish it more effectively. Thus the title, What All Interculturalists Need to Know, Why They Are Not Cross-Cultural Psychologists, Anthropologists, or Internationalists. Sounds a little negative, I know, but this is, and nothing against cross-cultural psychologists, anthropologists, or internationalists. As I discuss this today, I hope that we can see that all of us are operating in complementary ways, and many people in this room, in fact, are operating in maybe combinations of these domains. A good thing, but also good to know when we're shifting from one domain to the other. In other words, to know where the boundary is. Doesn't mean we can't cross the boundary, it just means we need to know where the boundary is. So that's part of what I hope to do today. My plan is to spend about 45 minutes doing this, to give you about 15 minutes to think through some questions, comments, and so forth, and then to spend another half an hour having some back and forth discussion. So I hope we can keep more or less to that schedule. So the three main things that I'll be doing today, pardon me for this Americana here, which is tell them what you're going to say, then say it, then tell them what you said. What makes us unique, not better, but good in a unique way. There's a kind of an interesting little piece of ethics buried in that. When we say that we are good, we're not saying we're superior. We're saying we are good in a unique way. We do something that other people don't do. That doesn't make us better than other people, but it does make us unique. And once again, to recognize that uniqueness, I think, is a necessary part of our identity. To do that, I'd like to talk a bit about a little brief conceptual history of the field, very brief. Some of the central research questions that I think have guided this field since the beginning. Secondly, and of greater interest perhaps to some of you, the primary application area that we have as interculturalists, and how those application areas benefit from coherent integration of theory and practice. And I will continue to use the word coherent throughout this talk. Thanks. So, 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Yes. It actually works, huh? Oh, okay. I'll continue to use the term coherent to differentiate from the run-of-the-mill theory into practice, which has become a kind of cliche in the field. Everybody says they do theory into practice. but frequently what they mean is there is a concept that we can kind of articulate that goes along with whatever we're doing. That's something different than coherent theory into practice, and I'll try to illustrate what I mean by that as we go through this, and to make the point that powerful application follows from coherent theory. That the more coherent our theory is, the more powerful the application. And if we are interested in powerful application, which many of us in this room are, then we should be looking carefully at how coherent we are in the way that we integrate theory into our application. And then finally, and we'll give a short bit of attention to where are things going. But the main purpose of this really is more to establish where we've been, where we are, how we can be where we are better, rather than where we're going at this point. I think by establishing where we are, we put ourselves in a much better position to have the conversation of where we're going. The IDR Institute this year will be sponsoring a meeting amongst a small number of professionals on the topic whether intercultural, where we'll try to tackle that topic. But we'll do so with an idea of, first of all, establishing our own identity. Well, let's talk about identity then, intercultural identity. As I said, identity can't be everything, otherwise it's nothing. That none of us in this room are every way. If we were, we would be no particular way, right? And likewise for us as a field. That does not mean that identity cannot be complex. And certainly this is true for us as individuals, and it can also be true for the field. That we can have a complex identity, one that crosses disciplinary boundaries, one that is inherently interdisciplinary, all the other things that we say about intercultural communication. We can have that complex identity. That doesn't mean, however, that there is no boundary to differentiate what one of those complex things is, interculturalist, as opposed to one of those other complex things, like a cross-cultural psychologist.